Alright, so we got 3 viewers. That's good enough. So let's just get started. So today I'm going to talk about leaders and what makes them great. So everyone knows that Setsu already has an aggregate for Japanese tier list, which is a very good indication of like which leaders are strong. It doesn't mean like you need these top leaders if you want to clear arena. Like all these leaders here can clear arena. It's just that it's changes depending on your consistency in clearing arena, whether or not you need good subs and relative power to clearing other dungeons as well. So let's talk about what makes a leader great. So for example, we'll take the true meta of Mirror. Oh god, loading pages is gonna suck. Let's probably load up a couple beforehand. Alright, so what makes a leader great? You have Mirror, right? Everyone knows she's good because of her heart cross, right? So for Mirror, the first thing you want to look at is what the leader skill does. For a leader skill, it's 7.7x attack and 50% damage reduction on a heart cross. And that's simply just doing a heart cross. You don't need to match any other orbs aside from your heart cross. So it's a pretty simple leader skill activate. But in addition to that, you also get 2 more seconds of orb movement. So combining those two with the how difficult, quote quote, the heart cross meta is, it is very easy to approach. It's very easy to make combos and very easy to have lots of time. But that's not the only thing that makes a leader good. It's just having a good leader skill. You want to have a good set of awoken skills and a good set of a skill. All right. So her base skill is just Moon Phase, which is just spawn 7 hearts and create control the world. Not exactly the best of actives, but it's a pretty decent cooldown, and it helps you activate the leader skill very simply. The next part is it's her awakenings. All right. Best part about leader awakenings is the fact that she's bind immune, and she has a good slew of offensive awakenings that come in either TPA, a row, and 3 OE plus. All right. So if you don't think about it enough, this seems like it's not entirely that great. But if you just have 2 leads, basically, you have an guaranteed OE plus, and you have guaranteed bind immune leaders, as well as 2 SBR. Mostly, if you're going to be running arena, you always want to have 100% skill bind resist, because 80% is 0%, as everyone knows. And the fact that she has a TPA means that she can be orb hungry, and she can also be very few orb usage. Well, that's a bad way to say it. But basically, she doesn't need that many orbs to do real damage because OE Plus gives you more damage, and you can just use prongs instead of rows if your team does so. And this is a very good base of what makes a good leader. She's got very solid stability, a very good damage multiplier, a strong utility in her skill, as well as utility that just comes from her leader skill by herself, as well as a good amount of awakenings that cover a lot of bases for what you want in a leader, which is being bind immune and having some amount of offensive awakenings that'll help you. So let's look at a different leader. Good old Raw Dragon. Very strong leader. Alright, so this one, you want to look at the leader skill, of course. It's very similar to regular Raw Dragon, but for this one, it has a very good damage control in the form of attribute matching. So the previous Raw Dragon Ultimate said that you get a 9x if you can match 5 out of 6 attributes, or if you want to count heart as non-attribute, it's 4 plus a heart. But Super Ultimate Raw Dragon allows you to hit at a lower base when you're starting at, what is this, 4 out of the 6, up to 6. So the damage multiplier is still the same, but the lower end is great. He also has good stability in just buffing all gods by 1.5x, and in leader skill active, which is pretty lackluster to be honest, but you can always overwrite that with inherits nowadays. But even if you don't use inherits, it's still very strong for your leader skills. You get 5 seconds of orb movement, always good on rainbow teams, and you get 2 turns of haste. Haste is always good, especially if you're running the base setup of Decali, Isis, and then if you use Suo Radra, you want to have Kana on the team for extra damage. After that, you want to look at the Awokens that he has. Bind Immune, always good. Skill boosts, always good. Double Prongs, which is always good. So if you match those light prongs, you're getting a 2.25x attack on top of that 144x. So your damage is almost going to be comparable to what Renove does with Kaides as subs, but this is on the leader, so you can have those triple TP subs if you like. And you also got time extends and a skill bind resist. This skill bind resist is what held back old Raw Dragon a little bit, because you needed Indra to get those 2 SBRs to get 5 SBR team. But this is also an example of what makes the leader good. It has a strong leader skill, it has variable damage scaling, and it has good stability in the form of a static stat boost. The active skill is lackluster, but over inherits can always fix that. So let's look at the other meta lead, Kaede. Blah. Alright, so once again, if we follow what we said about the other leaders, it has a pretty decent damage multiplier that's also tied to her stability, which is using Heart Cross, and a variable multiplier, which depends on using wood combos. So clearly, if you only use one wood combo with the Heart Cross and Kaede, it's kind of weak, but sometimes that's all you need to hit things if you're facing things in arena like Sopdet or Kagutsuchi, or if you're facing something in a dungeon that has really bad resolve attacks. But for most boards, you can usually clear with only 2 wood combos and still do great damage. So Kaede is a very consistent leader with very strong attacks. Her active skill is a very short cooldown and very useful. You can automatically guarantee yourself 1 wood combo, as well as that Heart Cross if you already have at least 2 hearts on the board, and also has a haste just in case. For her awakenings, she's not skill bind immune, so that's her one weakness. But she does have 3 prongs, 2 OE plus, and 2 fingers for extra time. So this makes it a very strong leader, and Kaede always works best in a system with some kind of bind clear. Popular bind clears include Parvati. Her new Revo Parvati has a row bind clear, so you match a row of hearts and you get your bind clear, or you can just inherit some kind of Grodin onto Parvati that also will clear Awoken binds if you happen to have run into those, or you can just use Odin Dragon if you have 300,000 MP. So that's what makes a base good leader, right? To recap, you have strong leader skill with stability, decent active, and strong awakenings to complement your leader skill. So aside from the meta, let's look at the lower leaders. So lower leaders on the flower tier list, the honorable mentions. Load time, please. So let's look at. Oh, it's on your band line here. Let's look at Noctis. Let's look at Sumire, and let's look at Paimon. So Minerva is just popular because of her ability to cheese Arena 3, getting 100% damage resists if you really needed it, with a Puppeteer on the team to change it so you're always on color. But yeah, that basically attributes to what makes her a good leader. She has decent damage, 3 times 2 is 6x as a lead alone. She has pretty good stability when fighting fire, light, or dark monsters, which you can always influence using a Puppeteer. And her leader skill activation is pretty simple. It's just fire and light combos. And if at the point in the game you can't match fire and light combos, you need to go into Endless and practice. Her skill is very, very quick. It's got a 5-turn cooldown, pretty useful. Dark to fire and reduced defense. Reducing defense isn't the greatest of skills. It's only used for a couple of situations like Preetras. But it's a low cooldown. You can override it with an inherit, so it comes up pretty quickly. And it's generally good on its own. It's straight up orb create. If you click on her awakening, she's bind immune, always good in the leader. She's got just a couple offensive awakenings, which is just an OE plus and a fire row. But she also blocks jammers, which occur occasionally. And she's also got that skill bind resist. So it's a very good base for a leader. It's not the best of leader skills, but it's definitely good enough for what she does. So that's Minerva, just for cheesing. So some of the lower, let's look at those. So we'll take a look at Paimon. Paimon's also a very strong leader. Let's take a look at his awakenings. His awakenings are very simple. He's got 4 OA plus and 2 fingers. So those are all pretty offensive. And you've got this skill bar resist. So if you pair him up with another Paimon, you've already got 2. You only need 2 more in the team. If you look at his leader skill, it's straight up damage for making light cross, and you'll still get damage for making a hard cross. Since you can combine 2 kinds of crosses, it is possible to get 3 crosses on a 6x5 board, and that'll lead to your maximum multiplier of 3 times 3 times 3, 9. Wait, no, 27 squared, which I don't feel like doing in my head. But basically, his skill is also very short. It guarantees your leader skill activation as long as you have 2 lights and 2 hearts, and also gives you a haste, which is always good on most teams with low skill cooldowns. But it's a very strong base. Decent leader skill with stability, offensive awakenings to aid that, and an active skill that aids in activating that. So that's what also makes a very strong leader. So another one, same type, is Sumire. She's basically just like Paimon, except you want to match just 5 OA plus all the time. It doesn't have to be in a cross, but you want to get the heart cross for a slight damage increase and that stability boost, which is 50% shield, 75 Vs too. That's why she's also good. She was also previously higher in the meta list, but now more leaders are coming out with more base stability, and her damage is okay at best, but she's pretty good for what she does. Damage on leader skill, stability, a good amount of awakenings, and an active skill that complements the leader skill. And one of my new favorites, Noctis. Ooh. So I'm pretty sure that we have this set of awoken skills already in NA, but Noctis is one of the newer leads that only lets you match a couple of orbs to make your combos. You need to match at least 4, so it's always a guaranteed TPA if you match an orb. You can always match more than 4 and clear more orbs that way, so you can get higher drops. But it's a very good leader skill. The multiplier is good. He's got that stability multiplier through a stat multiplier, and his active is fairly good as well. You automatically get 4 dark orbs to make a TPA, and you also get 1 combo to help you go over those combo shields. He's not bind immune, which is a downfall, but that's why you want to make up subs. The amount of bind clear on dark isn't very that high, but you can find a way to do things now with inherits and all those other things. But Noctis is a very good leader. It has a good variable multiplier, a good max multiplier, even better when his buff comes to NA, and he's very stable. Alright? So I think that's a good idea of how you can get why a leader is good. Another thing you want to consider is subpool. So I'll go back to Mir. So MS Paint best. So if you say you want to make a Mir team, you can run TPAs or you can run Rose. Either one's fine. Her OA plus makes sure that you automatically get a bigger damage multiplier, even though it says only about 60x when you do her heart cross. The OA plus is going to carry your damage even further, which is why teams like Sarasvati get so much damage. It doesn't look that impressive with just 100x rows, but with all the OA plus that also stacks with those rows, the damage can go a little out of control sometimes, especially if you get multiple row matches. So, for example, I'm going to use Mir here, and I'm going to use Mir here. Alright, so if you consider your awakenings, your leaders are already bind immune, and you've already got 3 OA plus on each side. Drawing is difficult. So this means you're automatically guaranteed an OA plus drop on every single board, which is always good. The only time where this is actually a problem is when I get into Parvati, and my Paimon sub always does over 300,000, so it always heals her, even if I only do a 2 match with a cross and 1 light. But let's not talk about it now. We just want to talk about her good subs. So what does Mir actually need to become better? She needs just more consistent subs, and her subs want to make plus lights, and she wants to do plus hearts. So basically any card that'll make her lights and hearts. So let's look. Light and hearts. So my initial choice for Miru is always going to be Mr. Wukong, who's always strong. What I like about Wukong is that he's carrying Rose and he's got a TPA for those boards when you only want to match a TPA. He's also got that bind clear if you really need it, but he's not bind immune himself, so it's not the greatest, but you can sometimes use this if you're in co-op and you'd like to bind clear your partner team. It's very good for working. He's also got that extra time extend on top of your already ridiculous 8-second base time. And he's got 3 skill boosts as well to make sure all your skills are up on the first turn. So Wukong is a very strong sub for Miru. He can support Rose, he can support TPAs, he has a good active that lets you get lights and hearts, and he enhances hearts as well. So he's a very strong staple sub on Mir teams, so you got Wu Kang. So another strong sub that people like to use, typing is hard, is DQXQ. She's not the greatest of subs, but she does what you need, which is, let me finish my boxes actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What DQXQ does is she brings those rows for damage. She's got 3 rows, actually. She's got 2 row and 1 TPA. MS Paint is the best. But she's going to bring 3 rows and a time extend and a skill bar resist. So she doesn't bring that many awakenings to the team that help, because these water rows are just going to hold you back a little bit. But her active skill is fine. It also can clear bad orbs, which are the jammers and poisons. And she's generally a very strong choice on your teams. So, DQXQ. You can also use, I think it's the light version, which is also strong. She just has Rose, right? Yeah, she has Rose and TPA, so it's similar to making a slightly weaker Wukong, but it'll do exactly the same thing as Awoken DQXQ. It just doesn't have that bad orb clear as well. And close the extra tabs. Alright. So what else? Other things that you want on a team for building is a good board change, and one of the best board changes is Apocalypse. Which Apocalypse are you? You're this one. So I don't use Apocalypse on my team just because I don't feel like it, but he has one of the better actives for a Mir team, which is change your whole board to hearts, lights, and darks. His Awakenings, he's got 2 TPAs for when you want to match TPAs, and he's also got 2 rows. So he's balanced in both regards, that you can make rows for your Mir team or TPAs for your Mir team and still do tons of good damage. He's got a skill bonus and 2 SBR, not skill bonus, 2 skill boosts to help your team. You've already got plenty with Wukong already and Mir for 5. So it's already a very strong staple sub in Mir teams. In addition is, Mir teams are always good when you can make optimal boards, and optimal boards are best when you can change an orb. DQXQ APOC is one of the popular board changes that you can make to make a bicolor board. When you make a bicolor board, you can always use one of the pre-made Setsu lists, and this is a good way to practice getting optimal boards and getting max damages when you need them. For example, you're doing Mir into Kali and you just want to one-shot her. If you can create your bicolor and then create your optimal board, you can do lots of damage. Even on the worst optimal boards, I think you can get roughly 6 to 7 million per sub, or per card. so that's about 42 million, which will one-shot most of the game for you before shielding. And even if you don't kill that Kali in that first turn, it will break her threshold, and you'll be pretty safe to just hit her in the next few turns. So Apocalypse is a good sub there. Another popular sub we'll look at is the Dragonbound Saria. Saria is one of the weaker ones, but she has what you want out of Apocalypse, which is she's got that one T. Oh, I thought she had two TPAs. Anyways, it's 2 rows and TPA for when you want to match TPAs, and it's a board change when you need it. Let's put Saria here for now. It's not the optimal team, but I don't care. But the idea is that she's going to be bringing. You got 2 rows, no TPAs. You got 2 rows and 2 TPA. Sorry, it's going to bring 2 rows and 1 TPA. What was I again? Anyways, so you've got 2 board changes in the form of Saria and Apocalypse. Right. So if you look at this as your base mirror team, you have Bind Immune leaders, you have a slew of row subs and TPA subs. The only card that doesn't have subs or TP, the only card that does not have a TPA on your team is DQXQ, but she's bringing a decent active with rows. She has 3 rows. Yeah. And she's got all the OE plus you need already. So most teams, you only want to go for about 10 rows. So you have 1 row on mirror, 1 row on that mirror, so that's 2, 3, 4, 7, and 4. 11 rows already. 11 rows with 6 OE plus. So when you do that match of row plus a heart cross, you can do a good amount of damage, and that base itself can clear most floors in arena for you. You can even go with TPA, Heart Cross, and combos, and that should be enough to clear the first 13 or 14 floors in arena without even trying. Yeah. Some of the other cards that you can look for in Saria, what's his name? Ever popular Wedding Akechi, which will probably come back at some point. Just like DQXQ into Apocalypse combo for a bicolor board, you can use Saria and Wedding Akechi to make a bicolor with enhanced lights, which will do tons of damage for you. His awakenings aren't that great, but this is a good base start for a Saria team if you happen to roll Wedding Akechi at some point. But I'm pretty sure everyone who knows what they're doing with this team knows that Wedding Akechi is already going to be super strong. It creates lights, hearts, and enhances lights. So this is crazy. So this is a good base for a team. You want to have a 5 SPR team. You want to have subs that complement your leader's skill, as in for Mir, it's create lights and hearts, and you want to have at least 1 board change on your team just in case you need to clear your board or you have really bad orbs on your clear. So this is a good base for a team. So let's downgrade a little bit. We're going to go back to an old team. We got good old Bastet. Alright? So for example, Bastet is pretty frail on her own, but she has a pretty decent multiplier. So we're going to create our boxes again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and good enough drawing. Expert skills. So we got Awoken Bastet and Best Cat. Alright, so what she's going to be doing is basically she has 2 sets of multipliers. She has a 16x when you match 7 combos, and she's also got a 2.25? Yeah, 2.25 when you skill. And when you combine those together, it equals to 36x. So, as a good base for most team damage, I like to use Bastet for an indicator of how strong a team is. 36x with TPAs. So if you look at her leader skills, She's got those poison poison resists just because. She's got 2 time extends, TPA, and an OA plus. So for this one, you got TPA and OE plus. And so she doesn't have any kind of stat multiplier, so you want to rely on some kind of shielding to help you out. So if you want to build a good team, Bastet, you want to start on TPAs because these both leads are going to have TPAs. So my first choice is not going to be Kaede because she's too good. We're going to go with OG. We're going to go Vishnu. Vishnu is going to bring lots of damage for your team, as well as a pretty useful active by getting that Wood Skyfall. Vishnu. Eh. Vishnu. He's got, oh, hey, don't do that. So he's got a strong 3 TPA base, and he's also got 2 fingers and an OA plus. He's also got 2 skill bar resists, which are going to help you out in getting 100 SPR super quickly. So he's going to bring 3 TPA, 1 OA plus, 1 OA plus. And 2 SPR. SBR. So counting your leads in Vishnu, you've already got 4 skill bind resists. Most teams, I'll recommend always getting a board change. A good low board change that people can get access to is you can get Verdandi or you can get Mei, the Awoken version. So Verdandi is more the safe version, and Mei is more the offensive version. For Verdandi, she's got 3 OA plus. I like Verd on this side. She has 3 OA plus, and she's got that SBR and a prong. Alright, so using this team setup with your only 4 subs, you have a guaranteed OA plus. Why does it say 0? It should be 1 OA plus. There you go. You already got 3, 4, 5, 6 OA plus on your team, so you have guaranteed OA plus. You already have a good TPA base in Vishnu and your other subs, and you also got 5 SPR ready, giving you 2 slots to work with. Bastet is very not orb hungry. She can do most of her damage only with a prong and lots of combos. I like leaders that do not need lots of orbs to activate. For example, you have a leader like Nobunaga, who has a very good base stat multiplier of 3x to devils, but he also requires 8 darks to get the second part of his leader skill. And you aren't really getting 8 dark orbs every turn unless you're running some kind of short cooldown team, like you have access to Halloween Layla? It's like Halloween Layla or something. Let me see if I can get it. Yeah, Layla. Halloween Layla, who is a 6 turn for making a dark row, basically. That's already 6. So if you already have 2 more dark orbs on your board, that's already good enough for Nobunaga. But now we're going to go off point from that. So Bastet's pretty frail. So what you want to do is you want to get a shield sub. Most popular shield sub for green, Mr. Susanoo. Alright, you can run green red or green light. I like green red because he's going to bring 2 TPAs. He's bind immune. He's also got an OE plus. And he's also got a haste activate as well to complement your team. Susan. Good old Susan. Alright, he's going to bring 1 OA plus and 1 TPA. He's also going to bring shield and a haste for your team. Since Bastet is going to be using skills to boost your damage, you want to have that haste to bring everyone back up. Vishnu's already pretty low cooldown with 6. What's Bastet again? Bastet is 5? It's been a while since I've used Bastet. Yes, 5. So you can rotate your skills pretty frequently to continue that 36x throughout your dungeon. And basically you have another flex slot. You've got your utility, you've got your board change, you've got your your good orb change subs, and Bastet herself is a low cooldown which you can inherit over with a useful active to help her leader skill. You can basically use anything you want in this slot, but you want to pick something that has OE plus, TPA, and basically anything else. But these are the main parts that you want. So say you are non-IAP, you can use a good base sub like Cu Chulainn. I think it's Wolf Hero. Yeah, Cu Chulainn. He's going to bring a TPA, he's got an OA plus, and he breaks hearts. So it's also low cooldown active to use that 36x to supplement. You can also use a heart maker if you want. I think one of the toy dragons. Can I just type in toy dragon? No. So let's just do this. Like 40 tops. He's pretty basic, but he's gonna make hearts and he's a low cooldown if you don't have access to other subs. What was I gonna talk about after this? Actually, I wrote a small script. But that's basically team building. Alright, dungeons. So let's clear that. So the second part of team building is dungeon building. Dungeon building is something I guess older players will be used to because they don't have inheritance stuff. But dungeon building is basically using your already set team build up or already base set team and creating that team based on how you want to tackle the dungeon. So this is just basic Sphinx here. Sphinx is difficult because of this floor right here. And if you really have trouble with the game, 5 combo is a little bit difficult sometimes. So for example, let's see, MS Paint. Let's use, what's a good leader for this type of dungeon? Could use Bastet again. Let me think. I think let's use Bastet again, make it simple. So we're going to have Bastet again on one end and a Bastet again on the other end. Right? So for dungeon building, you want to look at the floors and you want to evaluate how you want to tackle each floor. So the first floor is pretty simple. It's got 2 preempts in a form of low damage, and you also get 3 turns to sweep the floor. So if you needed to stall, if you're not max skilled and everything, you can stall on this floor. But it's a very simple floor. You just deal damage to sweep it. You don't really have to bring anything in specific. Get my boxes again. So basically, when you dungeon build, this floor basically tells you you don't need to do anything different other than match your orbs good. Your second floor here has Griffin, and Griffin is going to preempt you with a 99% gravity. I think the first turn he always does Sniper Eye, but basically this means that you want to be able to heal up after you get downbursted. So you want to make sure that one of your subs either creates hearts or gives you some kind of healing. So you want to have one sub slot that has a good amount of heal for your team. And then other than that, you can sleep the floor however you wish. It doesn't do anything aside from bind a sub and use Hunting Gale. If you get bound, you want to maybe consider getting a bind clear for your team. For Bastet bind clear, I like Fairy Tales a lot. You can use Thumbelina for a bind clear if you really needed to, or you can branch out and use any other bind clear you wanted. You can run Rainbows if you want on Bastet. It doesn't matter, but you want to make sure that if you're not going to be one-shotting Griffin, you want to be able to have a bind clear in case you need it. If you look further into the dungeon, you can see that you won't really get skill bound at all. So that for purposes of this dungeon, you don't need 100 SVR, which is perfectly fine. There is a school cooldown here, but we'll get on that later. So if you can complete this floor without taking a hit and getting a heal, good for you. Even if you don't heal, Next floor you're going to be facing anyways is Sopdet, which is a big killer in most runs in Arena. But she has a damage shield of 200,000 damage. So having a leader with good amount of damage control is great for your team. Bastet is one of those leaders with good damage control. She's got a pretty low bar for damage on her max. Well, nowadays max, but you can also tailor it down to be lower. So this one is basically you have 4 turns to kill Sopdet, and if any sub does over 200,000 damage, it'll heal her. Bastet's already pretty low on the damage scale, and you can adjust that even further by not matching TPAs. For example, when I was running Bastet, I know that with my team, if I do a TPA with a prong, I do roughly 1 million damage per sub with 3 TPAs, and my subs were Vishnu, Liu Bei, Mei Mei, and Verdandi. So I know that my maximum damage that my subs will do is 1 million. But if I tailor down my subs again to like 3 Master Green Orbs and about five combos, I can lower that damage to maybe, I think, 300 something thousand. So you can just go very low damage. You don't even really need a multiplier. You can even just work on multiplier off of Bastet's skill activate. The only issue here is that if you get Skyfalls, you're gonna get screwed because you're gonna do way too much damage on Skyfalls. So having a good form damage control is how you want to tackle Sopdet. But you can also notice that if you need more turns, you can also delay Sopdet if you need it. So if you're gonna need extra, you can bring a delay. If you absolutely need that delay for Sopdet. After that, you got Thoth, which is going to give you 5 cooldown or skill delay you by 5 cooldowns. Back in the day, you didn't have SDR latents, so you just have to take that. So you want to be able to tank small hits and just heal up. Bastet teams have pretty average recovery, not too great, not too low. But you can basically stall it turns out a little bit here. Since you're playing Bastet, you want to make sure you have skills up so that you can burst down Sphinx if you needed to. Get rid of this. Sometimes he'll make poisons, but Bastet already brings 4 poison resists, which is really useful sometimes. If you want 5, then you can use Parvati. Parvati also will make hearts for you, so she can fill in the heal slot as well as block poisons. So if you do this dungeon with Bastet, you can take Parvati to block poisons on the Thoth floor, have a heal, as well as bring pretty good utility to your team. Basically, all he will do is bind a sub, make some jammers, and make some poisons. So you can pretty much stall through this floor through those 5 cooldowns as long as you don't hit him too hard. And if you don't want to hit him too hard, you just don't match greens with your good combos, or just like mass clump a green and try not to make any combos, and you'll do pretty low damage. So you can stall pretty well on the floor. But once again, he doesn't have a status shield, so you could also delay on this floor if you really needed it, but you shouldn't really need that delay. Much better. So say you pass the Thoth floor, now you're down to the Sphinx floor. Now you're going to want those 5 combos, but the best part about Bastet's skill is she's going to give you plus orb movement time to make those 5 combos, in case you really needed the help. So once again, since if you know your damage, you don't want to take him under 10% because he will just one-shot you. But you want to be able to break through that fire part of his shield. So in order to one-shot Sphinx, your team needs to do about 7 million damage total, which is doable as long as you have more than 1 green TPA. So say you stalled enough on Thoth to get your skills back, and you have 1 good orb change, or you have a good board change to one-shot Sphinx with. I don't really like using a board change because sometimes a board change can screw you out of a good board, but a good orb changer that changes one orb to another color to give you more of what you need is going to be very useful in getting multiple TPAs. For example, back to my example team, every time you get 1 TPA with 7 combos, it's about 1 million damage. But if you get a second green TPA, it automatically goes to 2 million damage for some odd reason, because you have OA pluses that boost your damage. So if you can stack more than that, you can stack lots of damage and one-shot basically any floor with multiple green TPAs and combos. So Going back to the team building, you wanted to have a heal somewhere in between these floors with Griffin and Sopdet. You want to have a damage control to make sure you don't overhit Sopdet, and you want to be able to stall a little bit on Thoth to get your skills back so that you can kill Sphinx. So to build the team again, you have your heal and a poison resist in Parvati. If you need a bind cleared, you can use Thumbelina if you really didn't one-shot Griffin. But instead of Thumbelina, you can always take some other orb changer to help you sweep the floors. So say you are non-IEP, you can go once again, good old Kuchu lane. He's going to just break hearts you to get woods. You can use a delay if you need to. For Sopdet, for green, delay, there isn't very much options, but you can always off-color. You can off-color maybe... Oh, you can probably take Weejass if you wanted. The green one, you can take Orochi, you can take any delay. But currently we're just building a team to easily tackle a dungeon. You want to be able to take subs that'll be able to counter certain mechanics for you in the dungeon, and you want to be able to make sure that you can activate your skills still with your subs. So say if you needed to stall on Thoth, then instead of delay, you can take a shield instead, even though you probably don't need it because he doesn't do that much damage. I think this is the Legend Plus version. Oops. I've already made a mistake. You go away. No, this is mythical. This is good. Okay. So you can make a shield delay, or Weejass Orochi who has heals in case you need to stall on Thoth, and you want to have a good orb or board changer to help you tackle down that Sphinx floor. So maybe once again you go back to Verdandi if you want. You can use Sylvie, you can use Mei Mei, you can use one of the skill ups for such and such, like the Dragon Brown skill up, or you can even, if you're going super non-IAP, you can even use one of those Evo mats as well. It's not going to have that great of a stance, but it's going to give you that skill. And that's basically how you want to do dungeon building. You take subs that counter things inside of the dungeon, and you want to make sure that you're pretty safe. Let's take a look at another dungeon off the fly. So, let's look at today or tomorrow. Let's look at Sandalphon. Alright. So first floor is going to preempt you with a little bit of damage, which is okay. Most teams, I think, will have over 4,000 health. So you can just take that. The HP is pretty low, so you can just say, oh, this is just an easy floor to one-shot. Good enough. Your second floor is going to have a Jammer Preempt. So to counter Jammer Preempt, what you want to do is either have a skill that breaks that, or you can take a board change to counter that, or you just match the orbs and take a hit. She doesn't hit that badly, so it's pretty easy. Sandalphon's one of the easier descends in the game. Next floor, you're going to get one of the angels. So this is where you want to think about what you want to build on your team for the dungeon. So say you get Michael. Michael is going to be one of those high defense subs. High, quote, quote, nowadays. But you need to either ping it down or be able to unbind your leaders. So taking a bind clear for this dungeon is very safe, because you don't know if you're going to get Michael or not. If you don't get Michael, you can get Gabriel instead, who's still going to bind a leader, but only one of them. So you want to have a bind clear for that as well. If you happen to run to Uriel, you're going to be doing a little bit more damage, but Uriel himself is going to do more damage to you, and you want to be able to heal that off. So this is the floor that you're going to be thinking about when you build your team for a dungeon. Do you want to take? You definitely want to take a bind clear to help you handle these two floors, and you definitely want to have a little bit of healing, which is good on any team, to tackle the Uriel if you get it. Next floor is going to be Raphael. Raphael is going to say, if you have a dark team, you basically lose. So if you're trying to build a team, don't take a dark team into Sandalphon. Very simple floor. Either you kill him in 5 turns, or you don't. And then you have Sandalphon, who's just going to preempt you with a Skillbind resist. So this is, if you have a 100 Skillbind resist team, no problem. If you don't, that's too bad. You're going to Skillbound, you're going to have to stall a little bit. He's going to do a little bit of damage. I think for the time being in the dungeons, you usually have only about 25,000 health at this point in the game. Nowadays you can run 30 plus with Heart Cross, so it's not that big of a deal. But he's just going to hit you a little bit, and you want to watch out for his under 50, which is a Bind God for 10 turns. So what you want to do is either kill him from full, or be able to have some kind of immediate bind clear that'll clear everything for you. And that's going to help you tackle the dungeon if you really need to. That's just simple team building 101. I know there's only a couple of viewers right now, but I can take a request on building a team for X, like Lynthia, for example. It's a little bit more difficult to build for a rogue team. These are just fairly base teams if you want to tackle through most dungeons. So rogues are one of those dungeons where you level up inside the dungeon. It's going to start you off with a level 1s in all your cards, so you can have a serious, depending on which cards kind of level up differently. They have early peakers, which have higher stats when they're lower, and then they slow down in gaining stats as they get higher. You have late peak, which is the opposite of early, and then you have just standard curve, which is straight line. They gain stats normally. But in rogue dungeons, the more amount of experience that your card needs to level up, the slower it levels up inside of the dungeon. So if you're gonna dungeon build for this, you want to make sure that you have a good amount. How do you say? You want to have a good balance of high cost subs and low cost subs to increase your stats, so that you can tackle some of the floors. So, for example, first floor is if you don't kill all of these dragon seeds on the first turn, you lose. So you want to make sure that you can deal damage on the first turn. So you want to have some kind of activatable multiplier on that first turn. Second floor is just going to be plain old Cerberus. He's going to do a preempt to make some jammers, and then he's going to make poisons basically every turn until he's under 25%. When he's under 24%, he'll do Trinity Fang, which will one-shot most teams that aren't Heart Cross or HP multipliers. But yeah, that's what Cerberus does. So if you're going to team build against Cerberus, then you want to be able to clear your orbs and still be able to activate your leader skill to sweep Cerberus. Next floor is going to be the demon floor. Demons are always dangerous. They will bind the opposite color or do evil slash. So they do a pretty good amount of damage at 23,000. So you want to make sure that you can have a skill up to help you sweep this floor. If you don't sweep this floor, it's going to be very tough for your dungeon. So once you sleep that floor, you can move on to Folklore. Folklore is basically hit and tank for a while. He's got hits, he's got a gravity, so you want to make sure that you can heal up, especially after this gravity. So if he gravities you and you're under 17k health, you want to make sure that you can heal up over 17k in case he uses Gear Impact. It's a basic floor though. You heal and tank it and bulk up a little bit. I can veteran advice next stream. I'm just making test videos and stuff and trying Twitch's thing up here. Next floor is your basic ping floor. It's got Dub Mythlets and Mysterious Masks. These will kill you no matter what if you don't kill them in 5 turns. So you either break their defense or you just do mass attacks the entire time. Quite useful. If you're running Mythical Plus, you'll run into the Predras, so you'll need a true damage or some kind of defense void inherit on your team. If you don't have any of those, you either have to have a really good burst on your team, so a high damage team, or this is just going to stop you on your run. If you're running co-op, it makes it much easier because your partner can just take all the support skills for you and just help you conquer the floors. This is basically the first floors of Lynthia that you need to get through. Then you have the real boss floors of Lynthia. I think this is Threedia. I think this is Threedia basically. He's gonna eat your fires on your first turn. He always eats fires usually. So if you're running a fire team, then try to use all your orbs as fast as possible on that first turn if you're not going to use a skill. And if you are going to use a skill, you want to make sure that you sweep it so you don't have to deal with more jammers on your board. After you clear Threedia, you get to Lynthia first floor. She's going to give you that green fall, so if you have a green team, good for you. On her first turn, she puts up a 500k damage shield if you don't one-shot her. So my advice for this one is to one-shot Lynthia here, so you don't have to deal with that the 5-turn stall of 400k damage. Unless you're running some really strong tank team that can just whittle that down and no problem, go for it. But the fight with Lynthia gets really bad if you have to take the damage shield. And then you're going to run into Lynthia on the final floor, and she's going to preempt you with the Woken Skillbind. It's also going to be 5 turns, so you want to have a Groudon on a team or any team if you're running co-op to just get rid of that easily, or just delay her and stall it out. Either method is fine, but if you're going to be dungeon building, take one or the other so that you can easily tackle it and make your run a lot smoother. And if you just run down her attacks, she just hits a lot basically. And since you're running a rogue dungeon, your team health kind of varies depending on how many pluses you have and not your level exactly. So if you can tank the hits, tank the hits. If you can't, then try to delay her or clear these awoken skill binds to help you tackle the teams and stuff. So if you review from the top, what do you need to bring? You don't really need to bring anything to this floor. You don't really need to bring anything for this floor if your team can activate. You want to make sure you have some kind of activate to help you sweep this floor if possible. You don't really need an active here, so you can just do your board normally. You don't really need an active here unless your team is really low damage. You want to have an active on this floor if you want to one-shot the Predras and just go on through life. You need to have an active. You don't really need an active for Threedia. It'll help. So if you're very consistent, if your leader is very consistent in activating the leader skill without having to use a skill, always great. And then you have Lynthia, which you want to one-shot on my advice. You don't have to. But then you have to stall out her damage absorb shield. And then you can tackle on Lynthia, where you want to take either a delay for that Awoken Skillbind or a Groudon to clear that for you. You can also use like Pinello or LZL, which are lower, but it'll still work. It's just not Groudon. Yeah. I think that's the basis of what I wanted to talk about for this stream. Leader, team building, dungeon building. Yeah. I think I'll call the stream here and then check out my videos and then upload it onto YouTube or something to test it out. And then when I get some kind of good recording device, I can probably stream the game onto Twitch itself instead of just having this browser open as a stream. But thank you for tuning in. This has been a short talk on how to build teams. And catch my next stream if I make one eventually.